I know the topic was alive communities, and what that really means is your community is only alive if you've somehow figured out a way to incorporate it to provide value to your users and, by definition, value to your business. Otherwise, it's just people doing stuff. And I put this up not so that I can harp about myself, which is always nice to do, but to make a couple of key points. One is that the people that land up leading your communities are almost always not like the way you think they might be. Right? Because I had no background in growth or marketing before I started leading growthhackers.com. Okay? And just if I can get a show of hands before I proceed, had anybody heard of Growth Hackers before this conference? Yeah. Oh my God, that's awesome. Beautiful, thank you. You should have raised your hands anyway. And the second point is, just as the people who might land up leading your communities, could come from anywhere, the people that make up your communities are similar. And so it's important to think of them not only as members to help your business achieve a certain goal, but as people who have their own passions, their own likes, their own dislikes, versus thinking of them as a username behind a screen, which tends to lead to the wrong way of interacting with people. The second giant point is that there is no fixed way to grow any business. There is no fixed way to grow any community. There are no silver bullets. There's no magical growth hack. Your community will determine the kind of people you attract, and that will determine the kind of interactions you have on the community, and that will determine the kind of value you deliver. So, because our name is growthhackers.com, people think there's always something magical. Tell me that one thing, but there's never one thing, and people go away disappointed. And as has been spoken about, at the end of the day, when people ask me, community building, what's it all about? And I think Paras alluded to this as well, right? It's all about trust. Right? And has anybody ever seen this video on YouTube?
Yes.
The guy?
Yes.
All right. So one person. So for everybody else who hasn't, two people, right? So it's about this guy who basically comes up with these lines every day, and he gets closer and closer, and he sits down. And one day he gets too close, and there's this, and he steps back, and until it comes to the point where he's now sitting amongst them, right? And if somebody can do this, right, and this is sort of your ideal for the kind of bonds you want to build with your community, because once you have bonds like this, there's no amount of fancy new features, UI, discounts, none of that can compete with a bond like this, right? And there's not even, I couldn't replicate what he did, because if I tried it, this picture would look very different. There'd be two lions and me inside one of them. So the central sort of point that I'm going to be hammering home in this talk is about having a Northstar. And the Northstar is what represents the value you deliver to your users. And so there should be a way to quantify this value and then by definition grow the value you deliver to your users. So just a few examples to demonstrate this concept. So for an Uber, their North Star metric would be the number of rides on the platform. Because if there are cabs, people will call for them, and if there are people to call for cabs, there are more drivers coming onto the platform, and as people take more rides, Uber makes more money. Same thing for Airbnb. Right? The number of rooms booked is their North Star metric, because it's the same dynamic. If there are rooms, people will book them. If there are people to book rooms, you have more people putting up their rooms on the platform. Airbnb makes money. So the central theme here is that your North Star metric for your business is not money. Yes, everybody's in business to make money, but that's not your purpose. Your purpose is to deliver value to your users. And the way your community fits in to your strategy should help move the Northstar metric for your business. That makes sense? And so what I'm going to go through is show you a few examples of how communities outside of the blockchain space, and one example within, of how they've used this idea to harness the power of their community to deliver pretty hard ROI. And I'm going to use us as the first example. And so Growth Hackers started out as a passion side project for our founder. And it's evolved into many things, one of which is a software product that we monetize. And so everything we do on the community is towards that goal of getting more people to ultimately buy into this idea of how sustainable growth happens. And if they buy into that, they will ultimately need a way to manage how you do that, and that's where our product comes in. So every example you see from now on, there's a certain framework, which is what's your Northstar metric? So what are the goals for your community that might help? How do you incentivize people, to meet those goals, and then ultimately what the business impact of that might be. Right. And so for Growth Hackers, and when I say Growth Hackers here, I mean our product. Our Northstar metric is daily active users. And the reason it's that is because if you want to grow like the Facebooks and the Airbnbs of the world, you need to have the entire company engaged in ideation and testing and learning. And that means you need to have really high velocity of learning, which means you can only do that if you're actively engaged in some growth activity every day. The way the community plays into that, right, is that the field of growth and growth hacking is still new. There's still a lot of misinformation about it. And so the purpose of the community is to sort of dispel myths around what growth and growth hacking really is. And as people gain more knowledge from all of the discussions, they start to understand, not only about what it's all about, but now how do I actually make it happen? And so the reason people engage in all of these discussions on the platform is because ultimately the insight that our founder had was people like him were doing all of this great stuff, but they were toiling away in obscurity. Right? And because they were isolated, there was no opportunity to learn from each other. And so everybody needs inspiration for new ideas for what they can try next. And so that's probably the biggest driver of why people show up on Growth Hackers. It's become a daily spot for growth inspiration. And as you engage in discussions, your own brand recognition goes up. And as your brand recognition goes up, the people say, hey, you know what you're doing, can I hire you? You know what you're talking about, let me follow you. Right? Or you know what you're talking about, I think your business is the kind of business I want to work with. And so these incentives map very well to the goals for the community. And as they go through all of these discussions and understand what growth means and how they need to make it happen, the next question almost naturally is, so how do I do this? And that's where our product plays in. And while I'm not at liberty to share exact numbers, I can tell you that most of the people who land up using our product and buying it, because there's no free version of it, do come from the community. And so pretty much everything we do on the community is to drive discussions, and because that drives knowledge and understanding, and it brings people to the product. And if they use the product, by definition, they've bought into the philosophy of how growth happens, which is what makes them daily active users for our product. Everybody heard of Duolingo? Right? Language learning app. If you haven't used it, it's pretty awesome. But like any app, it's you on your phone. And they're in the business of teaching you languages. And so the bright idea they had was to harness people to help them produce more language courses. because they had a really small team and their rate of progress was really slow. And so they created a dedicated space for people to contribute to course creation and then to drive awareness of those courses. And so the Northstar metric for Duolingo is the number of language levels for each course that you progress through, because you level up your understanding of language by going through these levels. And each level has multiple sub-levels, but ultimately, if you're doing more levels, you're doing more learning, you're more active, you've gained value because now you're learning a language. And so their goal for their community was to empower all of the people who were passionate about language to help them develop, and spread the word about all of these courses. And why would people do that? And this is really interesting because there are some incentives that are obvious and some that are not. So the ones that were obvious was, if you participated and added value to these courses, you got recommendations. And these recommendations were good for college, for jobs, as somebody who had produced something of value that also added value to hundreds and thousands of people. It of course gave them recognition because it put your photo right up on the course page saying, this person contributed to making this course awesome. The ones that were not obvious were that people actually wanted to give back. Right? And the way you find non-obvious sort of incentives and motivations is talk to them, which is shocking how many people don't talk to their users. And people are generally proud of where they come from and their culture, and language is such a big part of culture, they just wanted to give back and teach their language to people. And another non-obvious sort of incentive for participation is people actually wanted to understand, how does this course actually get built? Because this is a transferable skill. If you know how to build a way to teach people something, that can actually lead to a whole different livelihood option for you. And I have a separate example on this coming up. And so again, goals aligned with incentives. What that led to was 39 courses being launched in 1 year, where earlier it wasn't even half this. And because 39 new language courses were launched, you had more people engaging in courses and more language levels being completed. Their Northstar metric moved, they added value. Salesforce, anybody use Salesforce here? It's a giant pain in the behind. It is probably one of the most complicated pieces of software you will encounter, which you would think would be, sort of not be a great opportunity, but they figured out a way to spin that into a positive. And when something is complicated, you have sort of two problems. One problem is, how do you communicate what the value of this is beyond the hardcore users? And Lord knows blockchain and crypto has this sort of an issue. And second, if it is so complicated, how do you get people to actually start using and experiencing the power of your product? And so the community they created was for exactly these two things, to help them market the product. Because if you had people that were hardcore enthusiasts who understood what the product was all about, they would be the ones telling people about how cool this product was and what benefit they got from it. And of course, because it was complicated, you'd need people to help other people with all of the questions they had on how do I do X and how do I do Y within this product. And the reason people engaged to help out, again, there's a cross between obvious and non-obvious incentives here, but the sort of non-obvious one was that people actually wanted to appear smart. And the reason they wanted to appear smart was because they knew their bosses were also looking at these communities. And if they appeared smarter than the next sales guy who wasn't on this community, that guy wasn't going to get the promotion. And again, this is not something you'd find out without asking people. And the other obvious one is, people got recognition for participation. They got badges, they got, front row seats at conferences, right? And you'll see this recurring theme here about recognition in pretty much every example I show you. But what they found was, because they had this goal of, spreading the word and support, and people wanted to engage, the people who engaged were more likely to buy and more likely to use. And if you're more likely to buy and more likely to use, you move Salesforce's Northstar metric, which is the amount of customer data you store in Salesforce. Because the more you do it, Salesforce is a subscription business. Salesforce makes more money as a consequence of value delivered. Everybody's heard of Udemy?
Yes.
No? All right. And so course creation platform, right? And it's awesome. Everybody wants to create a course nowadays, but intent is almost always greater than ability. And this is what they found is a lot of people said, yes, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to create this course, I'm going to become a millionaire creating this awesome course. People sign up for the course and say, okay, I don't know really what to do. How am I going to teach this? What's the best way to communicate my idea? And this is what they found looking through their analytics is lots of sign-ups, very few courses. And as you might imagine, the Northstar metric for a company like Udemy is number of courses created. Because if you don't create courses, people can't take courses, Udemy doesn't make money, right? And so they created this Facebook group. And with the simple goal of just having these new people who had the intent of creating courses be supported, right? And so they provided them with resources which were either available on the platform or not available on the platform. But more importantly, they provided them with some unofficial mentorship. So these were all the people who had created courses successfully, being in the Facebook group, helping out new people who had every kind of question imaginable. So you had people who had already been successful, helping people who were new to be successful. And why were people joining this group? Clearly, they wanted to make a livelihood. They weren't in, creating courses just for the heck of doing it. They wanted to make money doing these courses. So there was a reason to engage in this group, right? And as you can tell, like the top 10 instructors on Udemy have made a buttload of money, right? So the possibility is there, because creating a course is just like content marketing, right? Creating the content is just half the puzzle. Distributing it and driving awareness of it is the other big piece of it. And so that's what this community helped enable, right? And it was as simple as this. So the impact is because they created the Facebook group with people who were already successful in it, it enabled greater course creation. And because people were able to create more courses, hopefully more higher quality courses, people were able to take them, Udemy makes money. So value delivered in terms of courses being created. Right. So just to sort of summarize all of this. Communities tightly integrated with ultimate product value delivery, not standalone pieces, engagement for engagement's sake. Incentives for communities being tightly aligned with the goals and purpose of the community. And because incentives and goals are aligned, you can get hard business ROI because that moves the needle for value you deliver. So how does that sort of apply here, right? Clearly, I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here. And the key word here, of course, is strong, because it's not just about the number of members on Telegram, right? Because these are all of the people that are going to help you validate the idea, are going to help support, answer questions, stress test the limits of your product, and ultimately these are the people that become ambassadors for your project. And there are many factors that drive valuations for blockchain projects. That's everything from sort of the market size to the liquidity to the capabilities, but community is probably right up there, right? And having finally researched this space and speaking to people like Yana, thank you, raise your hand. But I'm going to talk about her community in a bit. But ultimately, blockchain communities have some issues that regular tech communities don't have, right? Which is the problems of, it's just scale. There's this rapid interest. So you've got people across platforms, and you're having one person, which like her, I don't know how she sleeps. She's like superwoman, like dealing with thousands of people across social media platforms, just trying to sort of herd cats, in a way. Of course, you have the problem of identity. So now you can't really determine like who's your most valuable person. There's just so much noise, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of these communities just get started because it's nice to show a nice big number. So there's no incentive. It's just let's all get together and we'll figure it out. Which is not to say that it's not possible to account for and mitigate some of these issues. What it means is that the role of the community manager is that much more important. And what it means is things that would otherwise be automated, whether it's things like analytics or reporting or reward systems, all of that takes on a high level of manualness in this sort of an environment. And what it also means is that unlike the tech space where you might be able to show very concrete and hard numbers for ROI, what you get to at best is directional ROI. But that's okay as long as the needle on your Northstar metric moves. And this is why having that number for Northstar metric is so important, even more so in this world. Right? And so Jana's community is for Syndicator, which, correct me if I'm wrong. So it's a it's a fintech product. So it's for asset management and investment, decision making. And there she is right there. And really, I honestly don't think she sleeps at all, because there's always a message from her at all times of day. But you can see that if you apply the same framework we've just been sort of considering, which is of a Northstar metric, goals, incentives, and an ROI, there are ways to mitigate all of the issues of scale, identity, and incentives. And so Syndicator essentially works on the idea of being able to make predictions that help you make decisions on investment. And I have the word accurate in parentheses for a reason, which I'll get to in a minute. But the goals of this community is to help make the product better. Right? And the way they've decided to go about doing that is essentially Jana looking through all of the interactions of people on the community and even proactively asking people, hey, who wants to help out? It's shocking how many people don't do that. Just asking, do you want to help? Instead of just letting people join and say whatever happens, happens. Right? Because if people self-identify either through action or by raising their hands and saying, I want to help, you now have a way of creating a completely separate environment just for them, separate from the noise. So you've just reduced the whole scale issue of playing whack-a-mole on all of these platforms down to one that really matters. So all of your other platforms become a feeder for your one community that really matters, that's going to help make your product better. And of course, the other goal of any community, and I think this is representative of a lot of communities in this space, is the communities are there for both of these purposes: make the product better and teach people more about the benefits of the product. And they've developed their own internal teaching programs, and they have their own ambassador program as well to help evangelize the benefits of the product. Right? And by doing both of these things, so not only is the scale issue solved because now you've got a dedicated community, you've solved to an extent at least the identity issue, because now you know these people. Now you want to talk to them more because they are providing you feedback. Right? So whether it's now you have their emails or you have their phone numbers or you know what they look like because you've done video calls with them, you're mitigating a lot of these issues that otherwise would just stop you dead in your tracks. And so the incentives for participation is our friend recognition again. It's like it's been proven hands down that recognition is the number one motivator for making sort of sustainable activity happen for any sort of product. In fact, this is also why video games, they have levels. When you level up, right? In the gamification mechanics, to be able to say I am a level X, whatever unicorn, like that's the first thing you say, because that's a recognition thing. But also, I think that's something that's maybe more unique to the blockchain world than it is to like the regular tech SaaS businesses. Is that the concept of rewards is not, it's not reward just in the form of recognition or in the form of special access. You actually get rewarded in the form of the currency or of the product that you're actually helping make better. And as I mentioned, because the goals of the community are aligned with why people want to engage in the community, the impact is of course better product quality, but it's also better number of products, better features, more understanding of the use cases of the product. You may not have specific numbers for how much better is the product quality, but what you will certainly have is that if the product quality is improving as a function of all of this engagement, the Northstar metric needle is being moved. Because if the number of predictions and the number of predictions being made accurately as people's expertise in making predictions goes up, that's value delivered, because better predictions leads to better investment decisions. You're making more money, value delivered. So hard impact in terms of specific product, yes, always going to be a challenge, but I think if you keep the focus on the North Star is ultimately what is this product helping enable, I think that helps solve a lot of the issues you have with, is this community any good? Has anybody ever heard of Kathy Sierra here? Okay, excellent. Right. So she did this talk called Building the Minimum Badass User. Right? You should Google that, and that will be the best 55 minutes you spend that day. And this is the central thesis of her talk, which, well, this was in the context of apps and products. I think this is the fundamental mindset change, is that it's not about you. It's not about your tool. Nobody cares about your tool. Everybody only cares about what you enable for them. Right? What do they achieve because of you? And that's an important sort of shift in the way I think people should be thinking about not only product, but community as well. What is this community enabling for them? It's very easy to see the benefit for yourself, but that benefit isn't going to be realized until you look at it from their perspective. And so, I hope this framework, has helped you at least, take one more step further, right, in perhaps thinking more deeply about, how your community plugs into your product versus being this separate thing. Because if you do, this is exactly what your users and members are going to feel like, because they're going to achieve things greater than they thought possible. Right? And so in the spirit of community, if anybody has the LinkedIn app on their phone, right, you can scan that and we'll connect. And I'm more than happy, to continue the conversation and learn from everybody. So, thank you.
I have a question for
Sure.
you. Okay, so I think in every product that you develop, that you create, the customer journey map is extremely important. It's not more about the technical side, it's more about the user himself. What does the user feel, or what does the user need, the psychological processes they go through to get to your product, to get to your solution. So I would like to ask you to share a bit about the customer journey map for growth hackers, and explain a bit how that can be put into blockchain, because I think the way I see it, blockchain still doesn't have, like blockchain startups, they don't have an idea of the customer journey map.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think when we're talking about a customer journey, we're talking about everything from how do they find out about your thing. We're talking about once they find out about your thing, what is their first experience with it? What is that first magical experience that absolutely tells them about the value that you're providing? And once they've recognized the value of whatever it is you're providing, like, how do you change their habit? Because ultimately this is something new for them, which means you're asking them to now spend less time on something else and more time on you, which means you need to develop new habits. You need to think about, now that I've shown them value, how do I get them to come back and experience more of that value? Because if they do, that helps, you know, if I deliver value to you, I move my Northstar metric, right, which means somehow I make money. And if they keep coming back, your opportunity to monetize them goes up. And if they keep coming back and if they buy, clearly they see value, which means they're now primed to talk about you with their friends, helping more people come through. So it's there's a certain sort of psychology that people sort of go through in their minds when they're encountering something new. So first, you know, you need to sort of go through, when you find something new, you just want to find out more about what it is. You're not making a sort of value decision. It's like, I just want to know what the hell this is. So there's the psychology of, let me just find out. Once they find out, you need to get them to like. Because people don't like to engage with things they don't like. And if they like, the next thing you want to get them to think about is trust. Because people absolutely do not want to deal with things they do not like or do not trust. Because there's no point in spending more time with them. And only if they like and trust will they even bother to try you out. And that is sort of the toughest part of the journey for people to get through, is get them to know about you. Once they know, get them to like what you're offering and trust what you're offering in that order. Only then can you expect that they will try. And that is the biggest hump to get through. And once they try, getting them to come back, whether that's you send them more emails, you send them more messages, whatever it is. Right? But you need to be intentional about, I'm going to send some notification every day, every week, whatever it is, to get them to keep coming back to experience that initial value. And if they come back, right, then it becomes easier to monetize and get them to refer you to everybody they know. Right? So I think that's the way I like to think about things. Is the toughest parts for me have always been, how do I get you to like and trust before I can get you to try.
Any other questions?
Good talk, Anuj. You know, when it comes to these ICOs, right? Most of these ICOs, I mean, they were in a way guys who were raising money.
Right.
But the whole point was they talked about community building.
Right.
And most of them went bust. There were just a few.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is it something they did majorly wrong in their community building, or they never? You think that many of them never even had a strategy of trying to build a community? They just wanted to.
Yeah. So I think.
What do you think happened?
So I think yes, there was no strategy, because ultimately I think these ICOs are a nice way to build interest for sure, right? But you need a way to then capture some of that interest. Like even if you, like, I don't know how many people show up on Growth Hackers every day, right? But not everybody derives value from Growth Hackers, right? And some people derive less. But it's incumbent on us, is when people come in, to be proactive about asking them about, so why did you come here? Right? If you just came here to, you know, get whatever coin you wanted, okay, fine. At least I know not to pay attention to you. But, you know, being able to, you know, or just hoping that I'm going to do all this and people are magically going to see the value of what I'm offering and want and be as excited about what I'm offering is just a fallacy. So I don't think there is a strategy in most cases. So you almost always want to pair your awareness building mechanism with an interest capturing mechanism right behind it. So at least you can weed out and segment and pay attention to the right people.
The problem right now with ICOs is you have user channeling, right? You do airdrops, bounty to get users into your tools, but you don't do billing. You don't actually do community building. You don't go out to organize meetups face to face, because people need to trust you. They see your face, they see how you are, they engage you see EOS building meetups around Asia, NIM, and so on, but they don't do it in the very beginning because money, right? It costs money and time. And some of them, they focus that time into building the product, and then they focus into building the community around the product. So that's one of the issues. I think there was one more question.
Do you have any original insight whether your community member is engaged with yourself?
Yeah, so I think this is why the lens of looking at everything through a lens of a Northstar metric really helps. Because if you understand what value you are delivering, then that informs every action you take to making certain kinds of interactions happen. Because every interaction that happens on the community is not as important. And this is also why it's extremely important to understand why people come. Motivations are all over the board. Right? It's almost a guarantee that even when people who are super interested show up and you don't engage them really quickly, they will lose interest because they're like, shouldn't you already be asking me? I'm already here. Like, why are you not talking to me? Because only then can you understand motivations and pair that with incentives that will help you achieve whatever goals you want. So there is no sort of secret to this. It is incumbent on every business as every new person comes in. Right? So why are you here and what can I do to service you if you are here for the right reasons? And if it's everything from education, I just want to learn more, to I want to help you do whatever it is, you can then funnel people into the right space to sort of build out their level of knowledge and expertise to where you need them to be to then provide sort of the value to them and the business. So the secret is talk to people.
How many we go?
Oh, okay.
One more.
Sure.
Because I really like the product you guys have. So Inbound, do you know about inbound.org? It was this marketing community that literally crashed because they destroyed it. And the ones that are left in this kind of business model are growth hackers and Sugar Biz, right?
Yeah.
And how do you see yourself? Because you clearly have more, let's say, a more powerful brand in this area. How do you see yourself, growing from here? Because clearly there are some issues with the platform.
Oh yeah.
We know it all too well. How can you perfect a product? Because again, for any kind of startup or company that is creating a product, it's not just creating something and then letting it go. It's also improving all the time because users change, the need changes, the market changes. So how do you keep
Yes.
up with it?
Okay.
Right? So I'm very interested in
Okay,
how
so
growth
I'll give you the long-term vision for growth hackers.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know whether we'll get there, but this is
Your
the vision.
roadmap,
Yeah.
right?
So, like I mentioned, Growth Hacker started out as just this side project. It was built on WordPress. The growth collaboration product was built around 2015, first version. The community was built 2013. It was when we saw that people are coming to the community to get ideas for things to test and to learn how to manage growth, was when we had the insight of that the community and the product need to be one platform. So we completely revamped the back end of the community to have the same sort of technological back end as the main product so that we could allow for data transfer between the two pieces. And we also made it really easy for people to extract ideas out of the community as these little embeddable idea cards, just like a Trello card, and save it into an idea repository. And once you build a habit of saving testable ideas paired with daily inspiration for growth, and learning how to make growth happen, if you are in the position that your startup is ready to grow and you need to start testing ideas, what are you going to do? Are you going to use some third-party platform? Or are you going to use the ideas you already saved here on our platform and use our own platform to start testing? And once that happens, the vision is that as you take ideas from the community and test them out, you can share results back with the community. And as you do that, you develop something like a GitHub for growth marketers, where you can now provide objective evidence of your expertise with making growth happen, either through some acquisition channel, or you're a retention expert, you're a referral expert, you're a monetization expert, you've run hundreds of tests, you've got this sort of a win rate, and it starts to become this giant talent marketplace. So if anybody looking for, like a Twitter expert or a Telegram expert, right, can then look through the community and just filter the community by show me all the Twitter experts, show me the people with the highest win rate, and I'm going to hire that person out. Right? And so, because there is no place like this, so and then sort of we become the central point, because the only way for you to develop and sort of share the data of all of your growth, testing, and wins is by using our platform.
Are you going to use blockchain for it? I'm asking because
I honestly
just
don't.
had a look at Proxima X. I was with the guys from them from Bangkok, and I had a look at Proxima X. It's a really good blockchain model to store large quantities of content, live streaming, video, and all.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think that thought has even happened yet, because there's too many other issues to solve for first.
But from your personal point of view.
I honestly don't know. But our fundamental sort of thesis on anything is we will do anything that will ultimately deliver more value to our users. So if it means going in that direction, so be it.
You're free to go now.
Right.